evening. It is actually still the night of Monday. It's Monday night. Normally when I get in here to record, it's still night for me because of my schedule, but because I work late shifts, for me night extends into the next morning. Why don't I pour one-handed like everybody else? Arthritis. I can't grip the bottle tight enough to do it one-handed. I can hold it, but I can't control it if I'm trying to pour. This is Oregon Spirit Wheated Rye. It's a very interesting deal. As far as I know, it is the only wheated rye whiskey in the world. And the only place I've ever seen anything from Oregon Spirit is Total Wine. It's an actual distillery up in Bend, Oregon, but it acts like a store brand. Maybe Total Wine is the only one who buys their whiskey, I don't know. But a rye whiskey is at least 51% rye, and usually more than that. MGP, the big distiller in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, has a 95.5 rye mash bill, 95% rye, 5% sprouted barley. If you've been watching this channel any time at all, you know I have allergies and they pop up as soon as the camera rolls. But there are different rye recipes. There's a Maryland rye, there's a Monongahela rye, there's a Kentucky rye, and each one has its own characteristics. But as far as I know, this is the only one that puts wheat into a rye mash bill. Speaking of things that well, that's not going to come out accurate, so I'll just chop that off, throw it away, start over. In the course of finishing up the rebuilding of my Whiskey Basics playlist, I realized that in the document that I have on my computer, which lists all 36 of them, I also have a list of unnumbered, what I call miscellaneous topics. And just the other day, I completely rewrote the description for the channel. And I mentioned that I have 3 playlists. Well, there is a 4th, the miscellaneous. I may just take that off because it's another pile of really amateur videos, and I haven't added to it in some time. I started this, by the way, that's what this is, this Sippin and Talkin. And of course you saw it in the title. But I saw that I had that list of possible topics, some of which I did in the miscellaneous playlist. I may do over, I may not. And one of them has to do with the question of whether Tennessee whiskey is bourbon. Well, I will tell you, first of all, if you want to fight about it, you go find yourself another boy. I ain't gonna. I'm gonna tell you here in this video why I believe that Tennessee whiskey is a variety of bourbon, but I'm not gonna fight about it. If you want to start a fight, go start it with somebody else. There ain't no profit in fighting over it. And I will say this, the fact that so many partisans of the position that Tennessee whiskey is not bourbon are so quick to fight about it, I suspect that part of it is they're just defensive. They know that by so many different measurements, it is. I've been fussing with this left sleeve all day. I'm fussing with it again. Anyway, what is Tennessee whiskey, first of all? Well, there wasn't a legal definition of it until, I don't remember exactly which year, but sometime in the 90s, 93, 94, somewhere around in there, I believe. So it's a new definition, and it's not a federal definition. It's a Tennessee state definition. It's Tennessee law, not a federal law. The Tax and Trade Bureau defines Tennessee whiskey as a bourbon. Multiple international agreements so define it. It's just a Tennessee thing. And it came about because Tennessee whiskey producers kept pressuring the legislature and the governor until the state legislature passed the bill and the governor signed it. Theoretically, what separates Tennessee whiskey from bourbon is the Lincoln County process. Now, there are different ways to apply it, but basically it involves taking the white dog off the still and filtering it through a whole a whole mess of charcoal. Jack Daniels drips it down through the charcoal vat. George Dickel, if I remember correctly, just pours it all into the vat and lets it trickle out. The problem with saying that it's the Lincoln County process which makes Tennessee whiskey, well, there are a couple of problems. First, there is a distillery in Tennessee which under Tennessee law is Tennessee whiskey. Benjamin Pritchard. I always get that mixed up. Benjamin Pritchard. And Benjamin Pritchard has never used the Lincoln County process. But it is legally Tennessee whiskey. And the other problem with using charcoal mellowing, Lincoln County process, as the standard is that Evan Williams bottled in bond, for all I know all Evan Williams, but I just know for sure about the bottled in bond, which is from the Heaven Hill Distillery in Kentucky, also uses charcoal filtering, but it's bourbon. So the Lincoln County process is not what sets Tennessee whiskey apart from bourbon. Then there was the master distiller at Jack Daniels a few years ago. I can't remember the name. This is sipping and talking, not researching and delivering a learned paper. But you can look it up just as easy as I can. And the master distiller at Jack Daniels, the largest producer of Tennessee whiskey in the state, which makes them the largest producer of Tennessee whiskey in the world, the master distiller at Jack Daniels said, "Oh, it's bourbon. We just call it Tennessee whiskey for marketing reasons." In other words, Tennessee whiskey is just like the E in Irish whiskey. It used to be everybody spelled whiskey with no E. And then the Irish stuck the E in there to differentiate their stuff from Scottish whiskey. That's the only reason there ever is an E in whiskey. And the only reason, according to the master distiller at Jack Daniels, remember, only reason there's a designation of Tennessee whiskey is just for marketing to set it off in people's minds from all other bourbon. So under Tennessee law, to be Tennessee whiskey, it first must follow all the rules of bourbon. So you are starting off making bourbon whiskey. To make Tennessee whiskey, you have to make bourbon. And then comes the Lincoln County process after the bourbon comes off the still. Does going through that charcoal magically change the product so that it's not bourbon anymore? All filtering does is remove certain elements from the whiskey, and the char in the barrel serves that function just as surely as a vat of charcoal chips does. Plus which, Benjamin Pritchard does not use the Lincoln County process. So you have to, under Tennessee state law, make bourbon before you can ever slap a Tennessee whiskey label on it. So, is Tennessee whiskey bourbon? I would not state it so broadly. It's true to say Old Granddad 114 is bourbon. It's true to say Evan Williams Bottled in Bond is bourbon. It's true to say, my brain is going blank, Knob Creek is bourbon. But then there are times you have to have a category. Angel's Envy is finished bourbon. It follows all the rules of bourbon, ages in the new charred oak barrel, but then they take it out of that and put it in another barrel for a much shorter time, few weeks, few months, so that it will pick up influences from what was in that barrel before. It's a finished bourbon, but it's still bourbon. And you can finish bourbon in a sherry barrel, in a rum barrel, in a wine barrel, and there are umpteen zillion kinds of wine. You could finish a bourbon whiskey in a rye whiskey barrel. You could finish a bourbon whiskey in, shoot, you name it. There's the double oak variety of bourbon where they're finishing it not in a barrel that used to hold something else, but in a second brand new barrel, charred barrel. So there are different varieties of bourbon. There's a traditional bourbon, which uses rye as a flavor grain. There's a wheated bourbon, which replaces rye with wheat. There's a 4-grain bourbon. And theoretically, you could make a 5-grain bourbon. Throw rice in the mix. You could have a bourbon which has no wheat or rye in it at all. You could make bourbon out of 100% corn. Or you could have corn and sorghum. Sorghum's a grain. You could have corn and sorghum. You could have corn and rice. And these would all be different varieties of bourbon because they're using these different processes, these different mash bills, but they're all still bourbon. Tennessee whiskey is bourbon, which uses really a variety of finishing. They're just finishing it before it goes in the barrel. You know, you could take a bourbon out of the barrel and then put it through the charcoal mellowing, but it would still be bourbon, and nobody would question that. It wouldn't be chill filtered, because that's a whole different process, but I guess you'd call it charcoal filtered bourbon. For that matter, and let's go back to the Lincoln County process. If you think that is what makes bourbon into Tennessee whiskey so that it's no longer bourbon, consider this. A Kentucky distillery could start burning maple logs, grinding them up, filtering its white dog through those chips, and then putting it in the barrel, do exactly the same thing that Jack Daniels and George Dickel do, but in Kentucky. Would that use of the Lincoln County process turn that Kentucky bourbon into Tennessee whiskey. If it would, then yes, you can say that the Lincoln County process is what makes bourbon into Tennessee whiskey. But if using the Lincoln County process in Kentucky would not make Tennessee whiskey, then you cannot say that it's the Lincoln County process which makes the difference. Now, I'm not trying to jump down anybody's throat. I'm not trying to trample on anybody's toes. I'm just giving you some facts and some rational thinking so that you can better understand what you're dealing with. And if you're new to whiskey, and remember, that's who this channel is for. If you've been drinking whiskey 97 years and you still like the channel, great. I'm not going to complain. But the niche I'm aiming to fill is new whiskey drinkers. And I want people who are new to whiskey to understand what bourbon is. I've got a Whiskey Basics video on that, I think. I believe I do. I know I've defined it here and there and everywheres. And I want newcomers to whiskey to understand what Tennessee whiskey is and to understand what's going on behind the fight that sometimes springs up about it. Now, I have my view. I've explained it. I've explained it many times on MeWe, and nobody has ever quarreled with any of the points I've raised. They might disagree with the conclusion, but they never argue the points I make, which tells me something. But I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm not trying to upset anybody. I'm just setting forth my views. This is sipping and talking. I'm doing the sipping, I'm doing the talking, so they're my views. If you choose to disagree, fine. Obviously, since I'm not going to fight about it, if you try to start a fight in the comments, at best, I'll just ignore you. And if you have a rational argument based on facts to demonstrate that I'm wrong, by all means present it. I'm not infallible. If you can show me I'm wrong, to borrow Martin Luther's phrasing and to paraphrase Martin Luther, if you can show me I'm wrong by facts and plain reason, I'll change my mind. Otherwise, I won't. Yelling at me won't do it, people. It won't do it at all. I'm just too stubborn. I intended to stop this 4 minutes ago, and I didn't. If I was to set myself a timer, I still couldn't finish when I want to. So, this is not bourbon. It's not Tennessee whiskey. It's wheated rye. If you want to try it, you might find it at your Total Wine, although the folks at the distillery told me it was a limited edition just for Total Wine. But whatever you like to drink, cheers.